I think the history of words.
No, the like finite
Phonology?
definitions of words. We've used it before. I forgot what the exact terminology is.
I don't know.
This is terrible because it proves that like humans can only remember to a certain degree and we forget everything else, and then but we have this collective whole where we can like kind of refer back to.
No, I mean that also is limited. There's nothing in here that's because the servers break information.
Right.
It's lost.
So assuming ideologically,
but then
all of that works.
But that's not in our nature to forget. It's because we're not ideal. God doesn't forget if God is the idealization of man. So I don't think you can compare those two things. The ideal system server, or the ideal information holder, and an actual human.
But say the ideal, right, would be us being cyborgs and all of this implanted as kind of like a referential kind of textbook knowledge basis.
I mean, I don't know if that's the ideal of a human.
Eventually, it's going to be like that. In my projection, at least, of technology as...
That doesn't mean it's the ideal person.
Right. No, I agree. But it's going to be, I think, the projected future is the collective memory and the collective encyclopedic database.
Yeah.
And so, what do then humans play? And what do we lose? I think we lose, obviously, part of humanity in that sense. Of the human aspect, but...
So we're not talking about the ideal, we're rather talking about, like...
I think we're talking about both.
I don't think so, because I don't think we can be like, we lose our humanity once we become the ideal human. It's like... No, in fact, we should gain our humanity. I think you can play a tricky game with the words and say, no, you do, like, what makes you ideally human is that you have flaws.
Right.
That's like a fairly common conception. And, I could totally see Zizek or somebody like that holding that view, like.
And doing a bunch of hand
gestures. Lots of like slurred words, and you're like, I don't know if you just talk weird or what.
Zizek's hilarious.
Yeah, he is.
But he's incredibly intelligent.
Yeah.
He always does that.
The violence. I do not know what you're talking. I can only do his accent sometimes. But
where is he from? I don't even know what that.
Like
Romania,
Slovakia or something like. He's like from some Eastern European country.
Anyway, we're digressing again.
Yeah.
As we always do.
I think humans, you can hold the view that the ideal human, or what makes us human,
right,
is that we're flawed and we forget things. But then the ideal human just would also do those things to the appropriate degree, to an unflawed degree. So I don't think you can say the idealization of a human is makes you less human. Rather, you can say the perfection of a human. To take human qualities and to push them to some, nth degree, some really you never forget, you never get old, your joints never hurt, and your hair never falls out. That's like a perfect.
The being. Ideological.
No, it's.
Yeah.
Oh wait! Yeah. I think that's. Oh, I get what that distinction means now.
The perfect future is the ideological.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So in that sense, say we can kind of assume or at least predict, have a future prediction of saying we're all going to be kind of just these beings, just these human kind of robots, and then all of our existence will be on this kind of infinitely existing mainframe.
Yeah.
And kind of like the Matrix.
That's the assumed premise. That's
right.
The assumed state of affairs.
Right. That's in terms of kind of from now projecting into the future, in terms of how technology moves and how humans interact with technology.
I mean, for one, I would slightly change that the way you say that in your paper. It's not now projected into the future, but now projected in a particular kind of future. You're you're baking in the circumstances you want to think about. Technology doesn't need to go that way.
Right, but technically it kind of evolves that way, or mutates and evolves that way.
No, it doesn't. It
Why?
Mutates to benefit survival. You have to establish certain things in order to increase fitness or increase survival. and then it would.
Well,
maybe
that's just pure evolution. Then mutations represent both the negative and the
evolution.
positive.
Yeah. But evolution, you can't say it evolves to that.
Right, evolution is linear completely. You don't de-evolution. That's the opposite.
I mean, no. There's no back and forth. Evolution doesn't have this. Evolution.
Right. It's forward. It's like.
No, it's not. Evolution is only adapting to your circumstances.
Right, based on
It's
surrounding kind of.
Yeah, so you can't say like maybe it'd be really beneficial if we forgot stuff really easily, in which case evolution would push us to forget things really easily and not have a database, like, because that's what the situation requires.
Which is impossible now because now.
It's not impossible.
No,
it's improbable.
No, yeah, you can't not forget. Like this allows us to not forget, or this kind of digital atmosphere, now.
No, I think one of the purest forms of forgetting, or like, so say you learn something
right.
and then you forget it, and then you never realize that it's a thing you could learn. It's not a thing that exists. It's like say you learned the name of a flower, and you forgot it, and
right.
then you completely forgot the flower. You don't you see it again and you don't recognize it.
Right.
You think this is the first time you saw it. That's like a very extreme form.
No, that's a very human aspect.
Yeah, it is. But then it would abstain from this kind of... Because you couldn't just go up and look it up. You couldn't think like, oh, let me, remember this. It's like starting from scratch.
What I'm saying is that eventually this digital atmosphere will be so ingrained that we won't be able to. We'll have it as a continuum database.
I mean, maybe, yeah.
That's
an assumption, though.
Right.
That's like not a bad assumption. It's like reasonable to a degree.
It is an assumption. I completely agree with you.
Okay.
I'm not arguing.
I thought you were trying to say that this is like I thought you were trying to argue that this is the way we're tending.
No.
You're saying in that situation. I keep forgetting.
But that's the most probable in that sense. Like you can kind of ratio it out in like a 75-25% kind of happening, right?
I think it's probable. I don't know if it's the most probable. I think it's like an interesting state of affairs to think about.
Sorry, I should also say it's more probable in the ideological sense of probability. Ideological meaning, I'm using ideological in that sense of...
we take the stuff we like most and then projecting that to some extreme degree.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I think what's really important is now that we're sentient beings, we understand how can we use this as data, right? Pure data to project the future. And then since we can project the future, possibly, quote unquote, right? How does that then how can we use that to our advantage, right? Because we have all this data now. How do we use it? And I think that's very prevalent in a lot of fields today, right? Where there's a lot of data.
That's a good question, but it's a different question than what you were asking before. You were asking before was that, like, given this state of affairs, what is the relationship we have to interior design, or what are the how do we carve out the designer-creator relationship? That doesn't bear on how we should use things.
Right. So that was talking about the present. This is more so talking about the future. So it's
no. That's not what I'm saying. One talks about the term is the normative state of affairs, which is what you ought to do, what you should be doing, and the other talks about what is the case in the future. In the future, what is the relationship between the creator and the constructor? In the future, what ought we to do with this? Okay, let me start over again. The two questions both take place in the future. One is, given us the database, what is the relationship between the creator and the constructor? The other question is, given the database, what ought to be the relation between the constructor and the creator? Or maybe it might be something slightly different, like what ought to be, how ought we to go around creating things, or something like that. I think there's a lot of different questions you could ask, and a lot of different questions that your statement could be understood as asking. But I do think that you were asking two different questions.
So how do we answer both of them?
how do you go about answering both of them?
Yeah.
I would, to understand how to answer the first question, how we will go about doing stuff, I would do empirical research. I would be like, what is the way that works, or what are we doing now? What are our values right now, and what are the likelihoods that we'll learn and change in a particular manner? And then figure out what that particular manner is.
Isn't that projecting the future, though?
Yes.
Which is the same as the second question.
No, it's not. I'll explain why it's not in a second. So that's one way to. Both of them project the future. I agree with you on that. Both of them project the future. One establishes what was most likely to be the case. The other establishes what ought to be the case.
So
even then, there's even more difference.
Right.
Between
so this goes into the whole pragmatics versus theoretical, right? The first one is more so pragmatic based, and the second question is theoretical. Would that be a correct assumption, or description rather?
I don't know if I agree with it. I think it's one way to look at it. I mean, you'd have to tell me like what it means to be theoretical,
right.
Like because once you start abstracting into the future, it's like no, there's tons of theoretical work that's done there, and once you start determining what we ought to do, there's tons of practical work there.
Right.
So
I mean theoretical in the sense of ideology of theory.
Yeah, I know. I think in both cases. You have a lot of pragmatics and you have a lot of theoretics. I don't know which one wins out. They come in different sections.
Or do they win out? Do they work with each other?
No, I don't mean win out. I mean like one might dominate the other. There might be more of one than there is of the other. If there isn't more of one than there is of the other, then it's just the case that if there isn't more of one than there is the other, then it's just the case that you're making like a false distinction to say that one is theoretical and one is practical. That's not the case anymore. We've established that because it is not the case that there's a clear amount of there is not the case that there's a clear amount of one or the other in either question or either state of affairs or situation. So it'd be the wrong question to ask, or the question that assumes certain things which are wrong.